Wait a minute. Okay, there's been a nasty accident on the main road and we're a couple of councillors short, so I propose we will just wait for 5 or 10 minutes just so that I can get here. That's all right with everybody. Cast. Done. Please can I remind everyone in attendance that if the fire alarm sounds, you should leave by the nearest fire exit. It may be behind you or it may be over this side, which will take you to Mill Hill Car Park. Welcome to this meeting of the Council. I'm Councillor Elliott, Chairman of the Council, and I will be chairing this evening's meeting. I would like to remind all councillors and speakers to use the microphones when speaking and not speak too close to the microphone to maintain the sound quality of the recording and broadcast. Only 2 microphones in addition to mine can be on at the same time. Okay. I would particularly like to welcome the members of the public who are attending this evening's meeting and to thank them for their interest in tonight's business. I recognise that our business here today is on an emotive matter and thank everyone in advance for being courteous and respectful in their interactions with other people here tonight. Please also make sure that all electric devices are switched to silent and notifications are muted. I would like to remind all councillors of the standards of conduct expected within the council meeting. We are all here to conduct the council's business and we should do this in accordance with our code of conduct. Councillors should stand when speaking and speak one at a time through me. If you are referring to a document in the report pack, please help us all by providing the page number and allowing us to turn to the right page. First item for this meeting is apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Beadle and Councillor Nunn. Are there any more? Councillor Bannister, Bateman rather.
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies from Councillor Rickman, who's unwell, and Councillor Bilby. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to remind all councillors to make sure they have signed the attendance sheet, which is over here. Any councillor who arrives after the meeting starts will need to note the actual time of attendance, so this can be recorded by Democratic Services. Councillors cannot vote on any business for which consideration started before their arrival. If you are leaving before the meeting ends, please record your time of departure on the attendance sheet. Second item on the agenda is declarations of members' interests. Do we have any? No. Do any members have any interest to declare on any item of business on the agenda? If so, please can you tell me the number of the item and whether your interest is a disclosable pecuniary interest, and other registrable interest or a non-registrable interest, and the nature of that interest. May I remind councillors to ensure that their registers of interest are up to date and any new or amended interests are reported to the monitoring officer. As chairman, I have agreed to accept an additional item onto this agenda, public questions. I intend to take this item concurrently with item 3, proposed submissions, draft Harborough local plan 2020-2041 for public consultation to enable the public questions and our debate to be informed by the information provided by officers. Because this is a large and complex item, prior to opening the item for questions and debate, I will be inviting our Director of Planning, David Atkinson, to give a presentation to Council on the draft plan. But first, I invite Councillor Galton to present the report.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members of the public. Just microphone a bit closer so you don't have to hear me. So this is a really important meeting this evening. We've reached a crucial point in the preparation of the local plan, which members will be aware on has been going on for some 18 months now since we took a decision to do that. And just to be clear, what we are being asked to agree to tonight is to go out to an 8-week public consultation. We're not agreeing the plan tonight. We're not making any final decision. We are simply putting the plan out to public consultation, and members will then later need to decide on the basis of what comes back out of that, whether they wish to submit the plan to the planning inspectorate for an examination. That will require a separate decision by the council. Now, the director is going to give a presentation of the details of the plan, but I want to put the plan in some context of where we are both nationally and locally at the moment. So nobody can fail to have seen on the news statements by the government of the day that they wish to deliver 1.5 million houses during this parliament. And to do that, they have revised the National Planning Policy Framework that came out just before Christmas. And that has significantly increased the housing numbers that local authorities have to provide and has increased the numbers for this council. If we want to avoid having to put 2,000 more houses into a draft plan, and it wouldn't be this plan, it would have to be another plan, we need to go out to public consultation now in the next couple of weeks. Failure to do that will mean we miss the transitional arrangements and we cannot go under the current system, i.e. the old NPPF, December 23 NPPF, which this plan will be tested against if we go to Reg 19, agree to go to Reg 19 tonight. And therefore, the housing figures that are in the plan were actually set by the last government. Not this government, but the last government set the figures that we're being asked to approve tonight. Now, the other pressing situation is the 5-year housing supply. Members will be aware that a few weeks ago, the officers informed us that because of that increase in the housing numbers, and because our current plan is now deemed out of date, that we no longer have a 5-year supply. It's around about 3.5, 3.6 years. The effect of that is already starting. We've had a planning appeal decision in Bilston in the last couple of weeks. We've lost that appeal. Significant mention about the housing supply situation. And just recently, we've lost one in Lubenham. And just over the boundary, I read one in Rutland that was the whole thing was about the fact they didn't have a 5-year supply of housing sites. So at the moment, planning applications will have to be decided against the National Planning Policy Framework. It's taken out of our hands, the plan is out of date, and the presumption in favour of development, sustainable development will apply. Members who've been here a number of years will remember the impact of that last time. To get back onto firm ground, to get back in control, we need an up-to-date local plan. By getting an up-to-date local plan, the figures will go from the higher figures set by the government just before Christmas to the lower figures in our draft local plan proposed for consultation.
1 minute left, Councillor Gold.
So stakes are quite high. We have a window of opportunity in front of us, and I hope the members will agree that we should go out for consultation, hear what stakeholders and residents have to say. Now, a final point I want to make, because this came up at the executive chairman, was that I understand the concerns about the proposed SDA, the largest site at Stretford. But that is not the only, the context of that is not the only large site. There's a very large site proposed, some 1,200 houses in my own ward in Scraptop, replacement of the Scraptop North site. There are 1,300 homes at Market Harborough. And we're continuing to propose to continue, obviously, we're trying to bring forward Lutterworth East as soon as we can. Some 1,500 homes there as well.
That's your 5 minutes, Councillor.
Okay, so the context is, in closing, we're not proposing just to put a whole allocation in one area. All major sections of the district are going to have to face some significant amount of development in order to meet the government's housing target. I'll leave it to that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I invite the officers to give their. Oh, yes. Could we have a second for that, please? Councillor Knowles. Right, now I invite the officers to give a presentation. David? Atkinson? I don't know. Just before you start, Councillor, could I just say that one of our councillors needs to have a comfort break. So can we just wait 2 minutes, please? It's not working. All right, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes then. Had to go home. She couldn't quite make it. She tried hard tonight, but unfortunately she can't make it. So we will now carry on with the meeting, and I'm going to ask David Atkinson to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good evening, councillors, members of the public in the public gallery. My name is David Atkinson, Director of Planning here at Harbour District Council, and I'm going to take you through the key highlights, messages, positioning of this important local plan to discuss tonight. There is a fair amount in my presentation. It has grown a bit because I think you need to understand those key messages. So do excuse me if I stand for a little while because I do need to get through those messages. Now, worst thing I could possibly do would be to rush through this. Because I want members to be able to understand the messages that we have got in here tonight. So hopefully members can see that. First of all, we've done it. We've prepared a local plan in a year, and that ought not to be possible in the physics of this planet. So it's been an awesome achievement to have prepared a local plan in a year for your consideration tonight. And my colleague on my left, huge kudos, huge respect for Tess Nelson, the head of service of the local planning team, for her outstanding leadership and work of the team. Pay huge tribute to the officers for making this achievement and bringing this to you tonight. Normally it takes 2 to 3 years, as I say, but we have a strong and well-evidenced plan for your consideration this evening. And what we're considering and what we're not considering today will be clear in the presentation that I will now move on to deliver. So by way of scene setting, Councillor Galton's already mentioned this. We're considering the publication of the new draft local plan for public consultation. And I know that is a big step. It's not all we're doing is considering the local plan for public consultation, but it is part of a much longer process. The plan will need to come back to council again with the representations, what's been said, for another meeting to consider the submission. And then there's the whole set of hearings that we'll need to go through in the public examination. So this is an important step, as Councillor Galton has said, but it's a step of many more to go before we get towards the final plan. We're publishing consultation, so 8 weeks should council approve it this evening, starting in mid-March and ending in early May. It's likely to start on the 10th of March, the next Monday, which is another important piece of work the team are trying to get through now. We can't be absolutely certain it could be the next day, but it needs to be by the 12th of March. The 12th of March is the absolute deadline for launching this consultation, because that is the date where we will need to meet the transitional arrangements of the NPPF December 2023 that Councillor Galton mentioned a while ago. So we can't go beyond the 12th of March. We're not considering any other decision today, just publication of that plan for consultation and engagement. And it's great to see all the people and interest in the public gallery. The input of the community will be crucial to the plan, but I stress the council must meet its development obligations, national development obligations, in making this plan. I understand the ideas that the community may have, but that is unfortunately and on which the government say the council must meet its nationally derived development needs. It's just how we do that, not if we do that. And then a sound adopted plan means the district is protected from speculative development. People talk a lot about speculative development, and that means we get the development where the plan guides it to. I won't say it's where we want it, but where the plan guides it to, and not where the development industry says it should go, which I think is important. So the national context in which we're making the draft plan, the government's introduced significantly increased national house building targets. The previous government had got challenging house building targets. The new government has introduced a layer on top of that to increase those even further. So there's a strong national commitment to build 1.5 million new homes in the current Parliament. The Planning Minister said in the House of Commons that all councils must play their part. That was a speech he made a few weeks ago, that councils need to play their part. I think it was in answer to a question, actually, where he said councils need to play their part. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever your view is, Harbour District Council is no different. And in the pursuance of that, we signed the Statement of Common Ground, Leicester and Leicestershire Statement of Common Ground, in December 2023, members may recall, in this chamber, which gave us the mandate to prepare this new local plan that we're considering tonight. And by preparing it, and this is not a defensive comment, by preparing the plan in the way that we have and in the timescales that we have, Councillor Galton's already said, we can go under the transitional arrangements of the new national planning, of the old national planning policy framework in December 2023, which colloquially qualifies us to deliver 2,000 fewer homes than if we were to go under the new National Planning Policy Framework December 2024, which would include the full ramifications of that increase in housing numbers. So the achievements in signing the Statement of Common Ground, as I've already said, clear mandate to prepare the new plan. We're sufficiently advanced to be able to go under the old MPPF because we've met at least 80%. That's the reason. We've met at least 80% of the new number of homes that would have been required under the new MPPF in December 2024. We're actually at 87%. So that qualifies us, if that's the right word, to go under the old December 2023 MPPF. As I said, around 2,000 fewer homes than would be the case if we hadn't qualified for that concession from the government. So we have a chance to deliver new homes in a plan-led way through our new local plan. Ideally, therefore, the development will go where the council wishes it to go, rather than where the development industry would wish it to go. So, in my view, as the officer, and it's a matter for members, we need to get forward to adoption of this plan as quickly as we can to cement that into place and get the plan adopted as quickly as we can. And key stage is doing what we're doing tonight, or maybe doing tonight, to publish the plan for that period of public consultation. So that was an hors d'oeuvre, if you like. The presentation contents itself, spatial strategy, a few words on that. The main sites proposed for allocation, selected other key components of the plan, importantly in our district, links to neighbourhood plans, of course. Key infrastructure, really important message, key infrastructure we're going to be getting from the plan, and then the vision, objectives. I'm going to cut out a bit of the strategy, to be fair, because otherwise it will probably be too much of a good thing. So I'm going to go vision and objectives, and then I'll probably move straight on to key messages. So the spatial strategy of the plan is to locate new development in sustainable locations, close to existing services and facilities. And that is a key outcome from our earlier Reg 19 consultation. That was a key message that came from that consultation. Allocating that development in or close to main existing settlements to enable existing strategic sustainable development principles to be given effect to, and for those new developments to get the maximum amount of support from existing services and infrastructure. There's a key thread through the plan to sensitively distribute development close to supporting services and facilities, and evenly distributed as best as we can across the district under that premise. Important development is not all allocated to the south of Gartree Road. It's a big potential strategic urban development area, but there are 5 other main allocations for new development, as Councillor Galton said in his introduction. So north of Market Harborough, east of Scraptoft, and some smaller scale strategic sites in Broughton Astley, the Kibworths and Great Glen. And you'd expect me to say this, the plan allocates a range of development to enable residents to live complete, rounded and healthy lives. Community is at the heart of the plan. Now that is the worst slide because it's got a lot of text on it, and so I'll go very slowly through this. The main sites for allocation are land south of Gartree Road, southeast of Oadby. Strategic development area, a cross-boundary site with Oadby and Wigston Borough Council, a total of 4,000 new homes, of which 3,150 are located in the Harbour District, with 1,200 programmed to be delivered in this local plan period to 2041, together with 5 hectares of employment and 5 hectares for travelling show people's needs, plus supporting infrastructure and elements. And the policy, and I'll not bother you with jargon this evening, but the policy is SA02 for that one, catchy title for that. North of Market Harborough, a composite site really. It's sort of 3 elements, 3 layers in one. 3 separate components, as I've said there, 250, 850 and 600 new homes respectively, making a collective of 1,700 new homes with a new primary and secondary school, and again those associated supporting facilities, and that's policy SA03. Land at Scraptoft East, Councillor Galton mentioned this as well, 950 new homes, a new primary school and associated supporting facilities, policy SA04. SA, by the way, stands for strategic area. Other proposed main allocations at Broughton Astley, 475 proposed homes, Kibworths 475, Great Glen 400, all of those supported by supporting facilities. And I think it's on another slide, but I'll say it now. Sites of 400 and above will require a master plan. So it is later on in the presentation, but I'll say it now, just so that that's very clear in this context, that sites of that scale and above will require a master plan, which I think is really important for guiding sustainable development. Magna Park, two proposed extensions to the existing Magna Park, one to the south and one to the north, for strategic B8 warehousing, 15.8 hectares to the south and 122 hectares to the north to satisfy the needs of that continuing industry. Other key components of the plan, it's important, Councillor Dalton mentioned Lutterworth East. It's a strategic allocation coming forward from the previous local plan, the current local plan, for 2,750 new homes. It has outline planning permission, so technically speaking, in our speak, it's a commitment. Proactive work is ongoing with the promoter to accelerate site delivery. We're talking to Homes England, they're talking to Homes England, and hopefully that is going to unlock that site that slipped behind where it ought to be a little bit in the housing trajectory. But it's an important part, still an important part of the plan-led strategy for the district. It hasn't gone away, it's still there. The settlement hierarchy is important to reference. We've got large settlements, clearly Market Harbour and Lutterworth, but other large villages too, that's in the next bullet point there of Broughton Astley, the Kibworths, Fleckney, Great Glen, Thurnby, Bushby, Scraptoft. But then there are also medium and small villages beneath those, which again, we're following the principles of sustainable development, seeking to allocate a proportionate amount of growth to those settlements. And the smaller those elements are, the more they're likely to get picked up in neighbourhood planning, which I know some of our colleagues in the public gallery may well be involved in. So that's a really important component of the strategy as well, neighbourhood planning. Clearly, it's all about the environment as well, and we've got green and natural environmental protection in there too, safeguarding settlement settings and heritage, retaining existing areas of separation and green wedges and developing those a bit further wherever we can, such as on the edge of the city of Leicester. So the site, interestingly, and this doesn't happen very often, but there's a site that we're not proposing to pursue, and that is Scraptoft North. And some people may be aware of Scraptoft North. We allocated it in 2019 when we adopted the current local plan. But unfortunately, it's been hit by quite a few viability considerations, and its viability has worsened. It's sad to reflect, since it was adopted very soundly in the plan in 2019. And they are suppressing delivery. So for us to be able to deliver and demonstrate a sound plan to the inspector, we need to be able to demonstrate delivery. And if we can't do that, or not able to do that adequately, there's little utility in us pursuing the site. So that's a very, very simple background as to why we're not pursuing. It's not being deallocated, but we're not pursuing it. Maybe a distinction without a difference, but that's the reason why it's not being pursued. So obviously the local plan team are very happy to engage with all residents after tonight if the plan is approved for public consultation. There's a number of ways of doing that, and there'll be more information coming out on how that's done, how the team can engage with the public very soon. I want to say a bit about links to neighbourhood plans. So it may mean a need for neighbourhood plans to be revised across the district, and our team will advise neighbourhood plan making authorities on the best way to do that. They'll be circulating some new numbers to neighbourhood plan making authorities to refresh their plans and update their neighbourhood plans should they choose to do so, part of that process. The new numbers are in the plan, mainly those smaller villages and medium villages for the neighbourhood planning side of it, but they're in the plan for the public to see and pass us their comments on as to whether we've got those distributions right. We've got a very capable neighbourhood planning officer able to support and guide neighbourhood plan making authorities in reaching those conclusions on their own plan making programmes in their neighbourhood areas. We very much value the work that the communities do on neighbourhood planning across the district. It's absolutely incredible, and we will do all we can to support those people and those groups, that all the hard work that they do to get those neighbourhood plans in place in the light of this new local plan as it comes forward. I wanted to just say a few words on key infrastructure, because it's quite an important topic and it's very high up the list of the public's concerns, I would suggest. So we are achieving quite a package of new infrastructure through this plan, should it be approved tonight and go forward further for the district to guide development in the district. 2 new secondary schools. That's quite an achievement. Very big deal to get a new secondary school, I think. One landed south of Gartrey Road and one land north of Market Harborough. Number of primary schools, not decrying those, they're important as well. New primary healthcare centre is quite a big deal. Land south of Gartrey Road, that doesn't happen very often. That's quite significant. New cemetery north of Market Harborough as well. There is a cemetery obviously just down Northampton Road, but it is running out of space a little bit, so that will be important for that side of the district's work. All sites over 10 will require sustainable urban drainage, quite important. We've heard a lot about flooding, the tragic events that there were in recent weeks and months, so it's important that we maximise sustainable drainage as much as we can. There it is, already said all sites over 400 require a master plan. Pursuing the policy of 40% affordable housing, so all of our residents, or as many as possible, can get onto the housing ladder. Mentioned already about some of the environmental protection. 2 new areas of separation between Ullersthorpe and Magna Park, and land south of Gartrey Road, Great Glen. 20, important again for flooding. I've realised that the public will be, probably one of their top priorities will be to hear about flooding and the tragic events, terrible events in recent weeks and months. We are going to be delivering a 20% betterment in green water flood runoff rates from all major sites. So if a site were to be a greenfield site proposed for development and it were to get through the plan and be granted planning permission, then we would see 20% betterment in green land water runoff rates for those sites. Moving on to the plan's vision. So planning and placemaking is at the heart of the plan. It's at the heart of most of spatial planning these days. We're enabling thriving new communities, delivering new homes and new communities, and new jobs and economic growth, whilst safeguarding, importantly, the rural character of the district, its rolling countryside and its distinctive villages and market towns. And the reason we're saying this is that we're looking to put a balanced strategy forward. There's quite a lot of focus, tends to be quite a lot of focus on the development, the delivery of strategic sites, and what's happening there. But we need to remember that we're also hopefully delivering a balanced strategy and protecting our beautiful district as well. So complementing existing town and landscape, integrating new development into town and landscape in a way that minimises adverse climate impacts, effects of flooding again, I can't say enough about flooding tonight, resilient to climate change, we've talked about better 20% betterment on greenfield runoff rates where greenfield sites are developed, and adaptable to changes in climate that may occur in the years ahead. We don't know whether we're going to get more intense rainfall events. We had a terrible event in early January, and heat waves. Only 3 years ago, we had the hottest summer on record, 40 degrees in Lincolnshire, over 40 degrees in Lincolnshire. So what does that mean for the need to adapt our development patterns? A range of policy aims for new homes, including, I've already mentioned, affordable housing. I have to say, subject to site viability. The policy is very clearly for 40%, but the planners and the members of the planning committee here tonight will know well that we have to consider viability as well, and we do have to remember that that is an important criteria too. Most sustainable locations, we've already said, in large settlements and settlement hierarchy, with access to local services and facilities. Transport infrastructure, importantly, sustainable travel options, working very closely with the Highway Authority of Leicestershire County Council, very positive relationships to make sure that we don't just plan for cars and plan for a rounded transport package. Important, we have a thriving rural area. It's not just about the towns and main villages. We've got AP04, commercial non-residential development in the countryside, which supports farm diversification and other commercial activity and interests in the countryside. Protecting the integrity of our settlements. Townscape and landscape setting is very important. These settlements have evolved over centuries, hundreds of years in many cases, with very distinctive settings. So we need to support neighbourhood plans in protecting those settings and integrating developments as sensitively as we can where new development needs to be put in place. Safeguarding the relationship between Broughton Astley and Sutton in the Elms is I've got a few spellings in there, is a key example of that. So a thriving rural economy, support business innovation, skilled job growth and training, all of that economic vitality and viability across the range. We've mentioned Magna Park already, and making sure our town centres reflect market demand, where we enhance our town centres, we'll deliver those when the market is in the right place to do it. But they're in the plan, ready to go when the market is in the position to do so. So, flourishing town and village centres, Market Harborough, cultural activities, innovative and independent shops. Market Harborough Town Centre is so vibrant that we need to safeguard that in the plan, and the nighttime economy as well can also be improved, and that's where the plan is looking to do that. Lutterworth, Broughton, Astley and Kibworth, mix of town and village retail facilities in those settlements that are sort of in that territory between towns and villages, complemented by health, leisure and community facilities. Important we get as much developer contribution as we can. Mentioned section 106 there. There are other techniques and tools such as the community infrastructure levy that we can also look at to support the delivery of strategic infrastructure. Safeguarding heritage assets, important, really a lot of heritage in the district. Some of it's quite subtle, some of it's really quite nationally significant. We know about the statutory stuff, conservation areas, listed buildings, but there's also the assets of local importance. And we've had a fantastic success with the work we've done on assets of local significance in recent years. Making the best of our tourist destinations. Foxton Locks, Grand Union Canal, probably nationally significant in their significance. Getting more day visits and overnight stays, and the sporting, leisure and hospitality scene, supporting that. Obviously the great work Harbour Town Football Club has been doing, and there are other sporting organisations across the district that have also had fantastic success in recent years and seasons. Community, community, community. So the plan is about communities. It's about creating new communities. Residents shape new development across the district. We need innovative and effective community engagement, and we're going to be as innovative as we can be and get as many access to as many views as we possibly can. Proactive and inclusive neighbourhood planning, I've already said. High quality design, respectful of context, safe environments. Those community users need to feel safe in those environments. Health, healthy communities. We want to see safe and healthy communities that can live their lives in happiness and peace in this plan. More publicly accessible green and open spaces is a really important part of that. The use of green and blue infrastructure, maximising wildlife potential, and I've already said health and wellbeing benefits for all. So that's the original reasons for doing plans, really, for the planning profession as a whole, making sure people can live quality lives. Delivering new homes. We had a spatial option in Regulation 18, addresses the needs of different communities, different age groups, different sizes and 10-year mix, providing the houses that people need and the specialist homes. We've got different kinds of needs across the district, not all one size fits all, where you've got the regular member of the public looking for a house. There are all kinds of different types of community out there that need specialist housing needs. We need to meet that full spectrum of need. Jobs and diversification, said quite a bit already. We provide new land for employment, enabling the conditions for opportunity and sustainable economic growth. Tackling climate change, reducing those emissions, greenfield runoff rates, master planning for housing, reducing pollution, enhancing biodiversity, and creating green infrastructure. All important elements of the plan. Celebrating heritage, preserving and enhancing that rural landscape, working in partnership to deliver those schools I mentioned and health facilities, sustainable travel choices, green and open space, and enhancing community facilities. Moving on to key messages. I've mentioned already, and this is the last major section of what I'm going to be saying tonight. So under the NPPF transitional arrangements, it's important to reflect that 2,000 fewer homes will be delivered in this plan than would be the case if we had to go on with the new NPPF. And the district has a great record of delivery of new homes. If we don't progress this plan to adoption quickly, we face a prolonged period of speculative development. We'll have a period of speculative development of probably 1 to 2 years, but if we don't progress this plan, we'll have to go into the new system. We don't know the new system. The government will admit us into that system when they're ready, and that might mean up to 29-30 we'll have no local plan in place, resulting in a loss of local control over where development goes. So, and also it would mean a loss of investment, of course. We've invested quite a lot in this new local plan and would require brand new investment to bring forward a new local plan. And I'm not overstating it there, it's slipping off the screen. but that could potentially be millions of pounds of taxpayers' money. We'll still need to meet the housing needs. We'll still need to deliver even without the plan. So we need the plan to in place to manage that development where it goes, for all the green and open spaces, the supporting infrastructure, the infrastructure delivery plan, the education facilities we've negotiated, the new job opportunities, and protecting the history, integrity, and structure of the district. We need the plan to do all of those things, to deliver high quality placemaking, master plans for those strategic sites, combating climate change, and protecting and enhancing biodiversity. We don't want to delegate this to the developers. We don't want the developers to be leading on all this, I would suggest. We want the council to be in control of this and leading on that. So to conclude, there's a lot there. I do apologise for speaking for quite a while. It's a comprehensive plan, an inclusive plan before members tonight. It has community, equality and opportunity at its heart, the golden threads through it. Vast amount, as members of the public may have spotted, of technical evidence supporting documentation, support the plan. Huge efforts gone into preparing it in that foreshortened timescale. And thank you very much for listening, everybody, and I'll hand back to you, Chairman. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David. So I will now open the meeting to the public for questions. In accordance with our usual practice, there will be a maximum.
I'd just like to query, Chairman, whether there are going to be any questions to the director, given he's just had a very lengthy presentation, detailed presentation, whether we're going to be able to ask him questions on what he's just presented to the meeting. Are you going to permit that or not?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, but it'll be a little later, after the public's had their questions.
As well as us speaking, or as included in our speaking? Can you just clarify that, please, Chairman? Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, for matters of clarification, yes, there'll be an addition to the speaking.
Thank you for that clarification, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, in accordance with our usual practice, there will be a maximum of 30 minutes for public questions. And any questions that there is not time to ask will receive a written response. Questions must be asked as submitted, and I have asked the groups are represented by one speaker, and that each question lasts no longer than 5 minutes, please. When you are asking your questions, please press the button on the microphone to ensure that you can be heard on the live stream. Please, can I ask the first speaker, Mr. Peter Scott, to come to the microphone?
Hello, can everyone hear me clearly? I'm Peter Scott. I'm a resident of Great Glen, and I'd like to thank the chairman for the opportunity to speak to the council in full tonight, and particularly to the portfolio holder and to the other members of the council. My question is, through the chair, can I ask the portfolio holder, Councillor Galton, other members of the planning committee, and also other members of the council, why there's only been 8 weeks set aside for consultation and such a restricted drop-in session? Also, from speaking to residents over the past few weeks, they wish to know why they have only found out the true extent of your plans from agenda addendums. This considering the massive impact flooding and recent housing developments have had on Great Glen. Thank you very much. That's my question in full. I'll leave it to my colleagues in Stop the New Town to expand on that detail. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gold. Councillor Gold, would you like to answer the gentleman's question?
Right. Thank you, Chairman. Now, because this was done quite short notice, the officers have literally been drafting these replies for me right up to this evening. So these represent the position. These are for all the questions that members of the public are asking this evening. They will require a bit further information, which officers will work on over the next couple of weeks, and we will ensure that where further information is required, the questioner gets a written response. This represents the position as the officers have prepared for me at this point in time. So in answer to Mr. Scott, thank you for your question. Local planning authorities are required by regulation to publish their draft local plan for a minimum of 6 weeks for public consultation. Should council approve the draft local plan for consultation tonight, it will be made available for public representation for a period of 8 weeks. Draft local plan has been publicly available since the 12th of February, providing a total of just under 12 weeks for residents and interested parties to review the draft local plan. The draft local plan and all supporting information will be available online 24 hours a day throughout the 8-week consultation period. The events around the district drop-in events, where officers will be on hand to answer any queries or questions people may have on the consultation process and the draft plan. People who attend the events will need to submit their representations during the 8-week consultation period so that they can be taken into account. Alongside the drop-in events, there will be dedicated consultation webpage with a purpose-built online portal for responses, dedicated phone number where officers can be contacted anytime during office hours if members of the public require assistance, dedicated email address, press releases, social media alerts, leaflets distributed to homes across the district, promotional material shared with parish councils, parish meetings and neighbourhood forum, publication of a non-technical summary, direct notification to all contacts registered on the council's consultation database, which includes all statutory consultees and other parties who have expressed an interest in the local plan. Paper copies of the draft local plan will be available to view at the district council offices, displays at the district council offices in Market Harbour and in the Market Hall in Market Harbour. Thank you, Chairman.
Our second questioner, Mr. David Campbell Kelly, is unable to attend tonight. His question and its preamble have been circulated, and I will read out his question now. Why the inclusion of a buffer over 16% when none is required by the NPPF? Even a 5% buffer, as required by the 2024 NPPF, from the target would reduce the housing target by 1,147. Councillor Galton, would you like to respond to that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell Kelly. He's been quite a regular visitor to the council over the life of the local plan and previously. Can't be with us tonight. I think his question's an important one. This is quite a technical question he's asking. So I'll read the reply that the officers have prepared. So thank Mr. Campbell Kelly for his question. The National Planning Policy Framework paragraph quoted in the question relates to the 5-year housing land supply rather than to the local plan preparation. The 5-year housing land supply is a monitoring tool to calculate whether the local planning authority is able to identify 5 years of available land supply. You see that this is quite technical. You also gather from this just how centrally managed the planning system is. I just make that point. In the local plan itself, a contingency is included to take account of the risk of slower or lower delivery on any of the identified housing sites. This contingency helps to ensure a pipeline of housing sites is available throughout the life of the plan period to deal with unexpected circumstances which may impact on delivery. To this end, the local plan includes a small contingency over and above the total housing requirement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Galton. Please could our third speaker, Harpal de Hellon, come to the microphone, please. Please ask your question as submitted.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm a resident at Stretton Hall, Great Glen, and my question is specific to the strategic development that the council is proposing at Stretton Hall, which totals 1,700 houses plus a travellers site. Now, combined with all the other allocations in Great Glen, it totals 4,000 houses. Now, to put that in context, there's only 100 houses in Stretton Hall and 1,000 houses in Great Glen. So that's almost a fourfold increase in the number of houses and people in the area. And so my question is relating to the traffic as a result of that. So as you all know, there's no major employment in the area. The nearest big employers are in Leicester, Market Harborough and Lutterworth. So and the public transport in the area is also pretty poor. So there's limited bus service and there's obviously no railway station in the area. So in reality, the only way people are going to get to and from work from that area is by car. So already, if councillors know the road issues in the area, so the A6 London Road is a single carriageway just along the proposed development, and it's already gridlocked, mainly with school traffic every morning. Chestnut Drive, which is also part of the proposed development, is a single carriageway and is actually a cul-de-sac. And then you've got the A6 bypass into Leicester and Kidworth the other side, which is equally gridlocked every morning. So to almost increase the car traffic fourfold in that area, I'd like to ask the councillors what their plans are for enabling the road network to support a fourfold increase. And also, just to follow on from that question, have the councillors that have proposed this development actually been out and seen the traffic during rush hour? And finally, I'd also like to ask the question where the thinking has come to propose a traveller site in that area. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Golden, could you respond to the question?
Yes, so some of the questions, thank you, Mr. Dunn, for his question. Some of the questions you've raised tonight aren't in your written question that you submitted to the council. You've raised additional issues here, which the officers will need to take away and respond to, particularly your last point there, which wasn't mentioned in the written question that you submitted. So what I'll do is answer your written question, and as I said earlier, we'll ensure you receive a written response to the wider issues. This meeting is being broadcast, so we will be able to pick up on what you've said. So the draft local plan requires infrastructure to be provided alongside development, including schools, healthcare and transport infrastructure. The new development will fund the infrastructure needed to mitigate the impacts of development when it is needed. The Strategic Transport Impact Assessment identifies a significant package of improvements to the A6 to mitigate the impact of the new development. This includes a package of costed improvements to both public transport and active transport infrastructure on the A6 corridor. The exact trigger points for when infrastructure is required will be the subject of detailed site-specific evidence, part of the planning application process, consultation with infrastructure providers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Please, could the fourth speaker, Dr. Anne Whitehouse, come to the microphone, please? Dr. Whitehouse, please, could we ask your questions as submitted, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a resident of Stretton Hall, Great Glen. So the Lutterworth East is already an approved strategic development in our district, and it has excellent proximity to existing jobs, such as Magna Park and other industries, good transport links, and it has outline plans for infrastructure. But as you've mentioned, its delivery is slower than expected. So my question is, why isn't the council focusing its energy on removing those obstacles and speeding up Lutterworth East delivery, which would and could meet a large proportion of our housing need in a more logical location, so we see real progress there before resorting to a whole new town near Great Glen Stretton Hall? a site that we already know has many potential problems, including no local jobs, major traffic issues and flooding, etc. Wouldn't it be more practical and more effective to focus our resources and the government resources referred to in the meeting of the 20th February on resolving the issues at Lutterworth East first and getting that delivering and fulfilling the housing requirement? Thank you.
Councillor Gold.
Thank you for your question. The existing local plan, which allocated Lutterworth East for development, was adopted in April 2019 and covers the period up to 2031. In less than a year of adoption, COVID-19 happened following the subsequent high levels of inflation caused by other global factors. This has impacted the delivery of large sites across the country where infrastructure costs have increased. That said, we anticipate a significant number of homes will be delivered at Lutterworth East up to 2041, which is the period covered by the draft local plan. If Lutterworth East had delivered as anticipated back in 2019, the council would still need to identify a substantial amount of additional land for thousands of homes to meet the development needs up to 2041, based of course on the government's housing targets set for us. Large sites can be more complex to deliver and take longer to come forward. However, they offer greater potential for infrastructure compared to smaller sites, which is why the infrastructure associated with the land south of Gartree Road includes new schools, a health centre, community infrastructure and transport infrastructure. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Galton. Please could our fifth speaker, Dr. Henry Winnan, come to the microphone, please? Could you ask your question as submitted, please?
Good evening, everybody, Chairman, councillors, members of the public. It's a pleasure to be here to address you all to cover what is very important to us. I particularly like David Atkinson's vision, but to me, the vision would turn out that it sounds like we would live in some sort of holiday resort. That is far from the reality of what we're going to have, with no distinction between Oadby, Stretton Hall and Great Glen. So let me ask a question, and I read debate, not hate, so I'm going to give the council a bit of love here. As we heard from David Campbell-Kelly, the Harbour District has overperformed on its housing targets in recent years, delivering roughly 150% of the required homes. So we are actually on track to meeting obligations or exceeding obligations to 2041, which is a number of 13,182 homes. So if I look at the 2023 National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 79A, a high delivery authority like Harborough, with 150% delivery over the past 3 years, does not require any buffer in its housing land supply. Actually, under the new NPPF, it's actually 5% requirement, but of course we're shooting for the old NPPF. Why are then the councillors supporting a plan that allocates roughly 1,657 more homes than the district actually needs, overshooting the requirement by nearly 2,000 homes? Given this overperformance, why is the council pushing for a massive new settlement near the Great Glen, Stretton Hall and Oadby at all? What evidence can you provide that these additional houses are truly needed, rather than district focusing on completing already planned developments, some of which are being withdrawn or failing when all the money has already been invested to push them through planning? On what evidence is this conscious over-allocation based, and how do you justify the extra strain it will place on our infrastructure and countryside? In any event, Harbour's plan appears to still lean on the 2018 strategic growth plan, a strategy that assumed a new Leicester Expressway towards the area that I mentioned and we live in would enable large developments, an expressway which has been since cancelled. This is therefore building on outdated strategic assumptions. Why are councillors proceeding with a development strategy predicated on major infrastructure when it will never materialise? So given the overperformance versus the housing delivery, how will the council deliver or justify this plan to residents when the fundamental infrastructure assumptions behind it, i.e. a high-speed link, road links, have fallen apart? Thank you.
Councillor Galt.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Winand. Thank you for your question. I'm repeating some of the answers I've given earlier because your question in part is similar to Mr. Campbell Kelly's. The National Planning Policy Framework requirement quoted in your question relates to the 5-year housing land supply rather than to the local plan preparation. The 5-year housing land supply is a monitoring tool to calculate whether local planning authority is able to identify 5 years worth of available housing land. And as you heard me say in my introduction earlier, unfortunately, we don't have a 5-year housing land supply at the moment because the government increased the number of houses we have to deliver each year just before Christmas. So despite overachieving those targets a few years ago, we are still in the unfortunate position of not having a 5-year housing land supply. In the local plan itself, a contingency is included to take account of the risk of slower or lower delivery on any of the identified sites for any reason. This helps to ensure a pipeline of housing sites is available throughout the local plan period to deal with unexpected circumstances which may impact upon delivery. To this end, the local plan includes a small contingency over the total housing requirement. Proposed housing allocations in the draft local plan are required to help meet the government's housing growth ambitions. In the case of Harborough local plan, the housing requirement is based on the previous NPPF and as such is lower than it were the current standard method of calculating housing needs to be used. The new development will fund infrastructure needed to mitigate the impacts of development when it's needed. Strategic Transport Impact Assessment identifies a significant package of improvements to the A6 to mitigate the impact of the new development. The exact trigger points for when infrastructure is required will be subject to detailed site-specific evidence as part of the planning application process in consultation with infrastructure providers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Galt. Okay, now we move on to the sixth speaker, Jackie Clowes. Please come to the microphone.
Oops. Good evening, Chairman, councillors, members of the public. I'm a resident of Great Glen and extremely concerned about this massive development that is proposed for our area. I ask a question on the infrastructure before occupation. I ask, will the council commit in no uncertain terms that no homes will be occupied on this new site until all essential infrastructure is in place and fully operational? This means completed road improvements, sufficient school places, expanded healthcare facilities, which are in dire straits at the minute, effective public transport links, and upgraded drainage before anyone moves in. If you won't make this guarantee, then how can residents trust that this development won't repeat the pattern of houses being built first and vital services lagging years behind or never materialising at all? Thank you.
Councillor Galt.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Klaus, for her question. So some of your question does relate to questions that were asked earlier, so there is an element of repeating what I've said earlier. The draft local plan requires infrastructure to be provided alongside development, including schools, healthcare and transport infrastructure. The new development will fund the infrastructure needed to mitigate the impacts of development when it's needed. There will always be a lag between completion of early houses on site and the provision of large-scale infrastructure. Where essential infrastructure is required to enable development to take place, this will be required to be provided prior to work starting. We work closely with the infrastructure providers to understand exactly when infrastructure is needed. And then I'm repeating to your second point, there will be a strategic transport impact assessment, and that identifies a significant amount of improvements to the A6 to mitigate the impact of the new development. The infrastructure delivery plan, the exact trigger points for when infrastructure is required will be the subject of detailed site-specific evidence, part of the planning application process in consultation with infrastructure providers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Galton. Well, thank you for all your questions. I will now open this item up for debate by councillors. Following the debate, immediately prior to the vote, the mover of the original motion will be given the opportunity to exercise their right to reply. Do any councillors have any questions for clarification by David Atkinson? Please be brief so we can have time for the debate afterwards. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for members of the public who have attended this evening and asking those questions. I do hope that we will all get circulated copies of the answers in due course. So I've got 3 points of clarification that I'd like to ask David Atkinson from his presentation. So first of all, David, I'd like to ask, you mentioned Scraptoft North. Could you just confirm whether that's still a live planning application being considered by a development management team? Second point of clarification, you mentioned about how there's going to be consultation events, but you actually said that the only physical deposition of documents would be here in this building and in the Market Hall in Market Harborough. But I'm sure you're aware that our adopted statement of community involvement policy requires deposition of printed materials in all public libraries and other locations throughout the district. I'm just wondering why, and if you could clarify for me, why we're not proposing to do that. It was mentioned in your presentation. And finally, David, I'd just like to, if you could clarify, you did mention about 5-year housing supply. So what I'd just like to ask you is in Appendix 5 of the pack of the report, could you just clarify about the delivery of the 5-year housing supply if we adopt the local plan according to what you've said, which is late 2026, the 5-year supply would be 3,285 homes. And Appendix 5 appears to me to indicate that we won't meet that until 28-29. I'd just be grateful if you could just clarify whether I got that understanding correct or whether I've misunderstood what's in the pack. Thank you very much.
David, would you like to answer that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, indeed. So the first question that Councillor King raised was about the status of planning application Scraptoft North. I can confirm the council is still in receipt of a planning application for Scraptoft North. It is still under consideration by the development management officers. We are in conversations on it, and that is still with the authority. In terms of the status of the statement of community involvement, we're just checking the status of that in the document as I speak. And whilst that is happening, I will move on to question 3. The delivery of the 5-year housing land supply is a way of establishing what the trajectory is for delivering 5-year land supply. So when we adopt the plan, if we adopt the plan, obviously there's a number of steps to go through yet. So far, we have to publish for consultation, we have to go through the submission, and we have to go through public examination. But the aim of the document in the housing trajectory is to deliver a 5-year housing land supply from the point of adoption. Clearly, there may well be applications that we're working on with developers in the interim to bring forward applications for earlier than the full adoption of the plan. We're looking to work proactively and in partnership with the development industry to bring forward planning applications as soon as we possibly can get them, should the council wish to pursue the plan. So those conversations are ongoing because it's an iterative process to bring forward planning applications for those sites that are in the development plan as quickly as possible, so we can cease to be in the vulnerable position of needing to accept speculative development applications, which is a suboptimal position to be in, I would hesitate to say. So those, Chairman, we're just checking out the statement of community involvement, and yeah, do you want to? Tess Nelson will pick up the answer to that, Chairman, who has just done some research into the statement of community involvement. Thank you very much. Through you, Chairman, I'll hand over to Tess. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the question. So the statement of community involvement was reviewed a few years ago, back in February 2020. Prior to that, we did indeed make a commitment to make a lot of printed material available throughout the district. We found that material wasn't being used terribly often. So the current statement of community involvement commits to have all of that material available.
Could you speak up a bit, please, Tess? Could you speak up a little bit, please?
Yes, so the current statement of community involvement commits all of our material to be available in our main offices, in other words, in the Symington building. So that will be available downstairs should anybody wish to come and consult that. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Page.
Thank you, Chairman. The council employed an independent consultant, Iceni, to produce an interim report that set out the minimum and maximum requirements for B8 in the Harbour district. And it gave two figures. Once if the Hinckley rail freight was permitted, and one without. The maximum figure was 140 hectares. And when I read the local plan and on the briefings, I realized that the number has been doubled. So could you clarify on what justification and why it has been doubled? Thank you.
David, could you answer that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for both the councillors' questions tonight. Thanks, Councillor Page. Thanks, Councillor King. There's still some uncertainty around the government's position on the Hinckley International Rail Freight Terminal. There has been proposals for a decision a number of occasions during the last government and the current government, and it's still not clear, absolutely clear, when the Secretary of State is going to reach a conclusion on that. The council needs a development plan, I would suggest. It's a matter for members, of course, how they want to consider that point. But it's my view that the council needs a development plan in place, though it's not really the right thing to do, perhaps in professional terms, to wait for that decision for the rail freight terminal. So the evidence base, as I understand it, just correct me if I'm wrong, put in place two scenarios, one with the development of the rail freight terminal having been delivered and one without. So the policy in the plan covers the scenario of not having the rail freight terminal in place. And it's also worth mentioning that the need for strategic B8 distribution has rapidly increased in the light of the COVID pandemic and the way that society buys a lot of its commodities now. Is a lot of it's particularly white goods. The way it buys those white goods tends to be through online purchases, and those are from strategic warehousing, not just in this district in the Magna Park area, but in major strategic warehousing and distribution centres across the motorway network. Certainly on the M1 between here and London, you pass quite a few as you travel south or north. So there's a need for rapid increase to be satisfied, Chairman, and also we need to make provision for in case the National Rail Freight Terminal is not permitted in that evidence base. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Sarpas.
Thank you. On page 117, regarding identifying affordable houses of developments to be 40%. My question on that is regarding Lutterworth East. Obviously, in December, the planning went through for Lutterworth East for only 10%, which is less than 835 affordable houses for Lutterworth East. And my question is regarding that is, can that be changed in the future? And can there be anything put in planning regarding housing associations to extend affordable houses in there? And regarding Lutterworth East, we've got 2 primary schools, but it never comes up to the point where when you're talking about in the document regarding proper infrastructure, why there is no extension for senior schools. Been going on about it for the last 5 years, but nothing has been put. Why we need 2 primary schools in Lutterworth East, why we can't have a secondary school, and the other questions regarding the 350 houses, can we please make sure that there is proper infrastructure put into the documentation of that? And the question, last question, regarding green open spaces, and I can't find the page that it says it, but for developers, yeah, we've obviously had the problems with developers giving management companies the lease for, is it 2 years or whatever the amount of years, and charging high rates on the green open space lease for people, and it's been, expensive. So how will you, with the developer, make sure, even though we know that the green open space policy is changing, how will you make sure that the same thing doesn't happen in the new developments? Thank you.
Thank you. David, could you answer that, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Sarr. Thanks for those questions. The affordable housing is often an emotive area, an emotive subject, and the policy position in the current plan and in the new plan, as proposed, should the council pursue it, is for 40%, evidenced 40% for affordable housing. But you may recall in my presentation, I mentioned the other side of the equation, the less palatable side of the equation when looking at affordable housing, which is viability. And the national planning systems allow the consideration of viability and developers to challenge delivery at the later stage of delivery of the site. And that is something that is tricky. There's no 2 ways about it for councils like ourselves in ensuring the policy for affordable housing is implemented. In terms of Lutterworth East, it's a case in point that the planning committee considered some modifications to the provision of affordable housing at committee in December. But importantly, and I think this is a more positive message in answer to your question, we secured in that piece a clawback mechanism whereby it may not be viable now to deliver affordable housing at a higher rate than is 10-12%, but if the economy were to facilitate higher levels of delivery moving forward, the life of the delivery of the development, which is likely to be 30-35 years of that size, then there's a clawback mechanism, and there'll be fresh viability calculations done at the commencement of each of the 4 phases of Lutterworth East. And if it's found that it's capable of delivering more, we will be able to claw back more affordable housing in those later phases. So there's some light there for us to hang on to, that we will hopefully be able to increase the provision of affordable housing in later phases. Councillor Sarr has mentioned about the education position at Lutterworth East and secondary schools. So Lutterworth East is an allocation from the current local plan, so adopted in April 2019. At that time, the evidence didn't exist for a new secondary school provision on the site. So the County Education Authority advised us at the time that that wasn't needed. Unfortunately, if that's the right word, that plan has been adopted, planning permission has been granted, and there isn't the evidence base to seek more secondary school education provision due to the time that's passed since then. So that is based on policy that was formulated in 2017, 18 and 19. So that's the reason for that. In terms of green open spaces, yes, he'll be aware that there's an open space review piece of work going on, and certain members in the chamber would like to see that accelerated, and I'm working with the Green Spaces Officer to accelerate that work so that we can seek a report back to Cabinet and Council on whether the authority wishes to change its approach from the current one of management companies being the first priority managing open space, has given some dissatisfaction to certain residents and members across the district, and move back to a more traditional model of the Harbour District managing those green and open spaces. But we just need to do that piece of analysis and review work, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Holly.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, David, for your presentation. I'm really looking for a specific answer to the proposed development in Kibworth named K1. K1 is going to be developed on a single carriage country road that runs between the Fleckney Road and the Wistow Road. Now, if you go down that road, as you will know, you'll notice two new developments that have just been completed in the last few years, and it leads you to a single carriage railway bridge. Now, my understanding that K1 will run along the side of the railway next to the railway bridge. Is that correct?
David. Please.
Councillor Holly. That's correct. We're just checking the detail now, so we can, when you finish your question, we can provide you with a full answer from the detail of the policy.
Like most of the villages within our area, the traffic becomes horrendous with the development of the houses that we've had in Kibworth. If you go to the Fleckney Road, you find most of the time that cars are parked on the side of the streets, and it's very difficult to go around. You now go to this single carriageway country road where the proposed development of 475 houses will be, adjacent to two new developments that have just been completed. Even if I'm being kind, there will be at least 475 more cars travelling on that country road. Now, if you go to the railway bridge, it has traffic lights and you can only go one way at a time. So my question is, knowing the cost of a new railway bridge, are you going to build a new railway bridge or widen the current one?
David.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Councillor Hollick. Some interesting and detailed questions there. It is a challenge to deliver this development and ensure infrastructure and supporting infrastructure is in place. And that is a key reason for publishing the plan for consultation tonight, if members conclude that that's the right thing to do. That we are working closely with the Highway Authority. The Highway Authority are bringing forward new, more sustainable transport plans for the county, and they are working hard on bringing those forward. They're not quite there yet, but the new national transport strategies indicates we need to be planning for more than just the private car. We've talked about that for many years now, many decades. Well, that's now beginning to actually happen, and the national, the County Highway Authority will be bringing forward policies to enable us to do that. So we'll be very interested to see those, as much as the members in this chamber and the members of the public will be as well. But you're right. We need to bring forward the right levels of transport infrastructure, maybe needs for changes to parking restrictions. We don't know. I'm trying to be as open and as honest as I can with you in answer to your question. But those are the points we want to hear from the public consultation, Chairman. This plan is not a final plan, it's a draft plan. And if there are points that needs to be considered back to the Highway Authority from Kibworth or anywhere else in the district on any type of infrastructure, not just highways, then that's why we're publishing it, and that's why we've extended it from 6 to 8 weeks. to enable people to make those points and comments back to it. Thank you, Chairman.
If it's on David's presentation just now. Yes, yes, please.
Thank you, David, and I know all of this is very difficult, but just to follow up, if the decision is that the bridge needs to be widened, who would pay for it? The developer or the government?
Chairman, Tess Nelson would like to have some more detailed information that she's picked up from the plan. So I'll ask Tess through you to pick that question up. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tess.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Collett. Just to draw your attention, in part to help answer with the question, to the strategic transport assessment, which is available as part of the background evidence for the local plan. It specifically looks at this issue in order to identify the impact of that sort of pinch point, if you like, on development of the site. So it was really just to reassure you that that issue has been taken into account. And I can just direct you to the relevant section where it just takes you through the assessment of what the impact of the railway line is. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Bannister.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, David. I've got some questions in relation to the buffer that is referred to. The council's proposed housing need is 13,182 up to 2041. The buffer is making an allowance for an additional 1,657 more homes. Can you just tell me how the 1,657 figure is arrived at? I'm just interested in the calculation. Could you also tell me if within that calculation completions are already included in that or excluded from the calculation? And my third question is in relation to the comments made in the written questions from members of the public about the current completions up to 2023. We're running at 150% delivery of homes. Can you tell me what the figure is for 2024? Thank you.
David, are you okay to answer that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Again, I'll invite my colleague Tess Nelson through you to pick up those answers. Thank you very much.
So Councillor Banerjee, just coming back on a couple of those queries. Can you hear okay? Ciao. Okay. So in answer to the contingency question, so this reflected a couple of the questions that we had earlier from members of the public around the contingency, and I think it's quite a complex, quite a technical issue. A contingency or buffer is used in two different places in planning policy. One is in 5-year land supply calculation, and one is in the local plan preparation, and they're two quite distinct buffers. So the sort of 5% buffer in the local housing, in the 5-year housing land supply, which has been referred to, is distinct from the local plan buffer. In relation to the local plan, there isn't a prescribed percentage that the government requires us to include. It's very much on a bespoke basis based on local knowledge. So the purpose of the local plan contingency is essentially to allow for either slow or slightly lower delivery on sites. So essentially it's a contingency. If we were to only allocate literally the 13,182 dwellings, if any site that should drop its delivery for whatever reason or be slightly slower, we would end up not being able to deliver sufficient housing. We would then sort of start to run into 5-year supply issues. So it's a little bit of a contingency to sort of ward off any circumstances which affect delivery on any of the sites. In terms of completions, yes, absolutely, those are taken off. So the residual calculation excludes completions. And if I could refer you, please, through you, Chair, to table. There's a table in the local plan that sets it out very, very nicely. So table 2.
Shout a little bit louder.
Yes, I beg your pardon. So table 2 in the local plan sets out completions, commitments, residual requirement and total housing requirement, both on a district basis, but also on an individual settlement basis. So that shows where completions have been taken off. And your final query, I believe, was around the 2024 updates. Those have not yet been calculated, but will do shortly. And that'll be updated in any subsequent versions of the local. Thank you.
So Taylor, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. I'm afraid I'm going to ask some quite obvious questions because I want to make sure I understand the process for tonight. So tonight we are voting on, or we'll be making a decision about whether this document goes out to public consultation. That's right, isn't it? So this is not the final version. I'm sorry, I'll carry on. Sorry, David.
Sorry.
So that was the first question. And then the second one was, okay, so if we don't vote this through tonight, what are the implications? And then the third one was, when we get the public consultation come back, will there then be another meeting for us to have a further discussion about this? Just
Thank you. Through you, Chairman. Thanks, Councillor Taylor, for those questions. The first one is probably I don't need to say any more than yes. This meeting tonight, the purpose of the motion on the table tonight at the moment is to consider the draft local plan for public consultation and for council to agree for that to be published by the government deadline of the 12th of March, which is very close. So in answer to your second question, if the implications of the council not doing that would probably be the council will not be able to go under the transitional arrangements and would therefore need to prepare a new plan from scratch under the new LURA local, the LURA Act, the Urban Regeneration Act, the Local Urban Regeneration Act, which is the one that governs the new planning system, and the new National Planning Policy Framework that was published in December 2024. And very colloquially, that would mean 2,000 more homes to be provided in the district and a significant amount more investment and time taken in preparing a brand new plan from scratch in a system that we're not very familiar with. And we understand the government is still proposing to have what they refer to, or I colloquially refer to as tranches, whereby they'll allow councils into plan making through the planning inspectorate when they deem as it appropriate. So a council like ourselves that have had an excellent track record of plan making might be later admitted into those tranches than a council that perhaps haven't got such a proud track record of plan making. So again, all accumulates to a lengthening period of speculative development. I've mentioned in the presentation 2930 is a figure that was referred to when we spoke to intelligent plans and examinations to Derek Stebbings, who members may remember coming and speaking to members before in December 2023. In terms of the process, absolutely. If council decide to publish the plan for consultation tonight, that will run till early May, and then we'll no doubt have quite a considerable number of responses, which officers will then analyse, pull together into a schedule, and bring back to cabinet first of all, and then to council for further votes to be taken on what to do with those responses and whether to submit the plan with those responses and the officers' responses to what should happen to them to the planning inspectorate for an independent examination. Thank you, Chairman.
thank you.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. We've been, the UK has been increasing the population over the last 20 years or so. And as that's happened, the National Health Service has deteriorated into an absolutely shocking state. And now we're going to go ahead and build 1.5 million houses in the next 5 years. what I would like to understand, Chairman, is that when we're building these houses, what is the communication system with the National Health Service so that they support the population? Are we considering, for example, on new developments, we have pharmacies. Pharmacies would be very good to have there. We talk about schools and other facilities, but I'm just want to explore a bit more how the communication is with the NHS locally, and also the impact on the large hospitals around us. How does all this information flow? Because clearly, over the last 20 years, it's totally broke down.
This is not a point of clarification.
It's question.
Well, can we
Okay.
get to the question then, please?
The question is, what level of communication do we have with the NHS as we build new houses and therefore the residents require greater health support? Thank you.
David? You,
Thank you through you, Chairman. Yeah, we worked quite hard, Councillor James, thank you for the question, to develop a relationship with our colleagues in the National Health Service. And we now have a number of colleagues that we meet on a reasonably regular basis, probably every 2 to 3 months. The the way the health system organises itself now, we meet with those colleagues and we have sort of strategy level meetings, which is probably part of your question in terms of how do we integrate our strategy with their strategy? But more importantly, or at least as important, we meet with them on the delivery side as well. So Section 106 is quite closely monitored with our colleagues in the National Health Service for them to put forward what they require, and for then us to design Section 106 legal agreements that, as far as possible, within the constraints we work within on developer agreements, to meet the needs of the National Health Service. Clearly, it can only be the needs arising from new development. We can't retrofit solve solutions from the past, but certainly as far as new development is concerned, we have good relationships with our colleagues in the National Health Service at different levels. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
okay. Well, thank you for your questions, councillors. I will now open this for debate. Councillors may speak for up to 5 minutes, and no further questions should be asked of officers. Any questions raised will be addressed in the right to reply. Does anyone wish to speak on the report? Councillor Bannister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I also want to echo the thanks, because it is absolutely right to do so, of Tess Nelson and her team for all the hard work that has gone into the preparation of this emerging local plan. Equally, I think it is also right that we acknowledge the context of how we got to this point. And as councillors will recall, we were asked, in effect, to turbocharge the local plan preparation, because there was a great fear that the existing local plan was running out of time, and we did not want to drop below that 5-year housing land supply, and we needed to crack on as quickly as we could to avoid the situation of speculative development. Councillors were asked to approve the movement of some £2 million from reserves in order to turbocharge the preparation of this emerging local plan. It comes, as Mr. Atkinson has rightly conceded, at a significant investment of council taxpayers' money to get to this point. The original timescale was that the local plan would be ready by December of 2024 and would go out for Regulation 19 consultation in early January. Along came the Labour government and its NPPF 24 that went out for consultation. And this council held its breath, because it knew that it would probably not be able to deliver under that existing NPPF 24. Fortunately, the transition arrangements did allow additional time for this council to get its draft local plan ready. And here we are in early March, perhaps 2 months after when we should have really had the plan out for Regulation 19 consultation. But although this council will appreciate the transitional arrangements and the extra time, it clearly will not appreciate what NPPF 24 also gave this council, and that was the very thing that we were hoping to avoid by making that significant investment, spending all that money, turbocharging the process all during 2024. And that is, we lost the 5-year housing land supply. It's about 3.55 housing land supply now. So unfortunately, despite all that money, despite all that hard work that's gone in, we have got to the point that we simply wanted to avoid in the first place. Some may wonder whether or not that extra investment, that £2 million council taxpayers' money, was really worth it when you realise what position we are in today. I particularly would want to see the consultation to take place because I do not want the risk of another 2,000 homes being added. And my view is that it should be allowed to go to consultation.
1 minute left, Councillor Bannister.
I have a number of concerns, though, and it is only right that a consultation goes out and the plan be tested. There's going to be testing on site allocations. For example, Falsworth Road at Broughton Astley, the sustainability appraisal report reports about high risk of flooding on that site. The development site could increase the risk of flooding in the area. Really, it's difficult to see how local ward members can positively support that allocation. The strategic site at Stretton Hall, there needs to be really close discussions with the county council about the infrastructure setup. They are already raising red flags with the Oadby and Wigston Regulation 19 about securing proper infrastructure.
Time's up, Councillor.
And finally, the strategic site at Stretton Hall talks about the need for an assessment on unexploded ordnance assessment to take place. Why that site goes ahead without that assessment, I really don't know. Thank you.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Chairman. So a couple of weeks ago, the document pack and evidence base for this draft local plan was finally published on the council website. Earlier on, we heard David Atkinson say the worst thing we can do is rush through. Well, that's exactly what this council has done. As my colleagues just said, £3.1 million worth. And we've done that by cutting out the community and reducing councillor involvement to the bare minimum. And in that document and in the evidence base that's available online, there are thousands and thousands of pages of text, data, diagrams, maps, most of which has never been seen by any of us or the residents, some of whom are here tonight. The report alone tonight is 1,298 pages. So as Councillor said, as councillors, we haven't been afforded the time to properly scrutinise, as the events tonight demonstrate, to evaluate this vast amount of information, nor properly test the assumptions and presumptions that have been made to shape this plan up to this point in order to do a proper job, as put it simply. And as one or two members are apt to say in this chamber, there are more questions than answers. Our residents are ultimately footing the bill and counting, but they will have, and us will have to live with the consequences. So I do not regard this as our plan, such as the lack of input that we have had as councillors. When the extraordinary cabinet meeting took place, I and Councillor Mahal and several members of the public raised a number of important questions, which were only answered late this afternoon at 17:13 hours precisely, according to the email. I do find that quite extraordinary that we only got the answers at that time. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is, do we agree that a consultation can take place on this draft plan? Well, I don't doubt that the administration will get it, will vote it through. The plan to allocate land at Stretton Hall for a 4,000 home new town the size of Lutterworth is odd, given the non-delivery from the current two SDAs. And it's also completely at odds with the various statements that Harbour is a rural district. And one of the distinctive features of the Glen Oadby border is the open countryside when you leave Oadby. This plan, make no mistake, will destroy that, along with hundreds of acres of prime farming land. The proposed allocation of 3.7 million square feet of strategic B8 logistics at Magna Park may create a further 3,000 to 4,000 jobs in an area where there are already 15,000 jobs concentrated. But there are insufficient workers to fill them from within an existing 1 hour travel to work area. So where are the policy measures in this plan to reduce the travel to work impact on the surrounding villages and to allocate the necessary homes near to this large jobs growth? I don't agree with the allocation of 475 homes and yet another employment allocation at Kibworth Beecham, nor the decision that's been made to lump both Kibworth villages into one locality. Finally, I want to talk about housing numbers, and I'm grateful but I didn't really get an answer to the question that I raised. This plan clearly proposes a 16% increase on the existing current local plan of 12,800 to 14,839, which is 706 homes per year, which is a 34% increase on the district's housing base by 2041 to approximately 58,000 homes. Yes, that's right, a 34% increase in the district's housing base. And of course, such rapid growth brings serious discomfort for our existing, as was mentioned earlier, ancient settlements and our newer communities.
1 minute left, Councillor.
Finally, reading Appendix 5, Housing Trajectory 2020 to 2041, and doing the maths, it looks like we still won't have a 5-year delivery supply until 2028-29, despite everything that's been said. And even then, only just 5.19 years. So this means that the developer open season will continue for possibly 3 to 4 years after the post-adoption of this plan by December 26. We will not be protected. I fully accept the need for a local plan, but for these reasons and many others that I don't have time to go through, I don't believe this draft plan is sound, and so it is not ready for public consultation. I will be voting against. Thank you.
Councillor Sarfus.
This plan, they've worked hard on this plan. Because obviously the Conservatives don't want a plan. They don't want to build houses in the community when the government policy is to build houses. There's a consultation. The rules say how long the consultation is. We're not breaking the rules regarding when the consultation will be. And those to say that it cost 2 million, when in the council meeting they wanted us to spend the 13 million, spend. So no plan is perfect. If the Conservatives had done their plan, we could sit here and nitpick it and have a go at it. There are things that I don't necessarily agree with, but there's always in a plan that you don't always agree with things. I'm, for Lutterworth East, there is that concern regarding jobs because of most people come to work at Magna Park from outside. So there needs to be something put into the plan. I'm still going to vote yes for this plan because the plan has to be done. it has to protect the amount of houses that you have in certain areas. That's what a consultation is for. No one's saying that these houses are going to be built in your community. That's why we're having a consultation. And so maybe somebody is making this political, where this should not be made political in a by-election, but in the community is something that is important to you. And so we will look at it and make sure that you, when you go into the consultation, that you have your say and that they listen. That's the purpose of a consultation. If the Conservatives were in power, they themselves would be doing exactly the same thing. Thank you.
Councillor Down.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I would agree that in normal circumstances, it would be preferable to have a local plan, but not a plan that is not fit for purpose and is short on proper input from elected members. It is all very well to say that we will open the plan to consultation. I'm not sure what this will achieve. Contained in the pages of this vast document is that it will be very difficult to change the sites proposed because that would lead to the whole plan being rewritten and would not meet deadlines. The plan has been rushed through at great cost to the ratepayer. The definitive maps were presented to us on the evening of the 11th of February. There was no dialogue with councillors on the sites chosen prior to this meeting. In effect, a fait accompli. Looking specifically at Broughton Astley, it is well documented that Frolsworth Road this year has seen massive flooding to residents, houses and businesses. This is not unique. Having lived there all my life, this is a regular occurrence. This year has been very severe. We are now planning to put 475 new properties off this road. This without the prospect of speculative developments, possibly adding 250 more properties. I cannot imagine what this will do to traffic movements trying to access the village centre, schools or the village bypass. It seems that planners have had dialogue with the parish council but not deemed it important enough to include one of the two ward members. It appears that one site chosen is not that favoured by the parish. I would like to see the results of these discussions into the sites being ignored in favour of the one chosen. And a question, prior to the sites being unveiled on the 11th of February, why was there no discussion with elected members? Thank you very much.
Councillor Page. Councillor Page.
Thank you, Chairman. I can only echo what the previous speakers have said, so therefore I will not do a repeat. Fundamentally, I am in support of a good, solid local plan and responsible development. And if you recall, our last local plan in 2019 guaranteed us a 5-year housing supply, and it was all inclusive. We even had a meeting for all the parishes at the Swan Hotel. But my general objection to this are in regards of the process. And this plan will have my name attached to it. And I cannot be part of a plan that has been produced with mainly officers and a process that was not open, transparent, and the decisions were not scrutinized fully. So therefore, besides the flaws and the contradiction and a lot of paperwork we've never set eyes on, and in fact I remember it was a Tuesday a couple of weeks ago when all of the back paperwork was uploaded in one go at 11 o'clock in the morning. I've been struggling to work my way through it, and I don't think any general public will have a chance. But I will focus on Magna Park. For instance, DSO4, and that's just one flaw to mention, I want to pick up. The focus there is to encourage farming and the farming economy. But Like in many other instances, it does not state how. So how can we encourage farming and support our farmers when we turn huge areas of good farmland into concrete wasteland with huge sheds on it? The Office of National Statistics states that Harborough District has the lowest unemployment rate in the East Midlands, yet the excuse for large B8 expansion is to create employment, and as Councillor King says, not with the houses attached to it. But even then, we cannot fill the vacancies on the park. And if you look at Google, there are thousands of vacancies to be filled every day. My mantra has always been to demonstrate need and not greed, and especially when there is a low demand, according to the consultant that was employed to write the interim report. In 2017, a GL Hearn report defined a minimum requirement of growth of 100 square meters for B8, and now it is infinity and beyond. Last year, Leicestershire commissioned a study, and we're still waiting, Leicester and Leicestershire, and we're still waiting for the exact requirement, justification of need and apportionment. The lack of evidence was mentioned in the Rec 18 consultation responses, but of course none of us members have ever seen those responses. So something had to be put forward into this Rec 19 that's going out to consultation. The independent consultant who produced the interim report already floated huge numbers, taking into account Hinkley Railhub demand with or without the permission, and came up with a very large number of floor space. However, regardless of this, Harborough District Council decided to double that number of requirement without any justification or evidence. Once this goes into Rec 19, it would take on weight, and I think the proposal is unnecessary and irresponsible. There are no solid policies to underpin the safeguarding of my residents, their amenities, and the proposed separation between them and the warehouses. If this goes ahead, my residents will open their front doors and find themselves inside a warehouse. What happened to protecting the environment, the Human Rights Act, to live peacefully in your existing home without intrusion, noise or pollution? Besides over-intensification, there is the accumulative impact of these warehouses, the additional traffic on the A5 and on the rural road without a proper plan for access and infrastructure. All of this fails justification, in particular as other sites were submitted, and a local plan should be positively prepared to seek the area's objectively assessed needs, taking into account reasonable alternatives.
Time up. Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't intend to make too many comments, but I was stimulated to put my hand up by some comments made by Councillor King and Councillor Dan. And they both shared their concerns and implied that the process was carried out in a manner which I simply do not recognise. And I wanted to let council and observers in the public gallery know of my thoughts. Councillor King, you've attended many of the local plan advisory panel meetings. I am on the panel, same as Councillor Bannister, Councillor Moder, 2 or 3 other councillors in this room. I think Councillor Mahal attended one of the more recent meetings. Members of the public may not know, but approximately once every 4 to 6 weeks or so, officers and councillors meet up and basically go through a substantial portion of evidence gathering, of some provisional ideas, some suggestions, some initial conclusions, draft conclusions, etc., such that I recognise a large amount of what's in this huge report in front of me, because it's all been gone through already with many of the Conservative members opposite me in a session which is, it started off being private, but it quite quickly went to be public. Sometimes it had to go into confidential session, particularly on housing sites or housing numbers. But Councillor Dan, you made a comment that there was, I think I wrote down, no disclosure prior to the February 2025 publication of sites. I can't agree with that. I mean, please come back afterwards, but let me say my piece if I may. Back in, I believe, May 2024, all councillors were invited to a round the table map session. So one table had the big Broughton Astley map of all the fields that the developers had put forward, or landowners. There was a Kibworth one, there was a Lutterworth one, there's a Market Harborough one. Now, in that May session, I was the only member who turned up out of all the 4 Broughton Astley councillors, and I noted that Councillor Bannister, whose ward adjoins the Broughton Astley area, so it was just me with my red, orange, and green stickers. But many of those Sheila sites were there, and then that rapidly moved forward. I won't dwell too much on the process, but that rapidly moved forward to another all-member briefing session. I believe it's September, October 2024 time, where members will all know that the maps were put up around the room, and those maps contained what I believe were the initial draft proposed sites in many of our locations. And I don't think I'm breaching confidence in any way to suggest that for the Broughton Astley site, you could trace it back to then, September, October time. So many of those sites were known to many members here back in September, October. It's not a surprise when it comes to February. We were attending meetings all throughout. Councillor Bannister, I believe, is on the local plan advisory panel. I think you've attended virtually every meeting. It's been good to see you there. And I note your comments, relatively supportive comments this evening. You've gone through the process, you've had the evidence presented, you've asked lots of questions, as have I, as has Councillor King. And you appear to be broadly supportive of the need to avoid getting 2,000 extra houses if we don't pass this to consultation stage tonight. I'm very concerned about any member that doesn't come up with an absolute critical, damaging fact.
1 minute left.
Thank you, Chairman. Moaning about the process, saying that it's a surprise and you haven't been included, I don't recognise that at all. Councillor King, you've attended 6, 8, 10 of the local plan advisory panels. You've asked possibly the largest amount of questions, maybe first, maybe Councillor Page was just behind you, particularly on some of the warehousing. But the cud has been chewed and chewed and chewed in these panel sessions, and an awful lot of this document in front of us has been gone through in detail at those meetings. You may disagree, and I'd be interested to know if you do, but much of this is not a surprise. All opposition members have been included throughout, and many of the sites were known about in September, October time. Thank you.
Just a point of clarification.
Well, I don't need Councillor Graves to tell me how to attend meetings, Chairman, point 1. Point 2, I remember the maps early back in the whatever it was. My question was, when the sites were chosen on the 11th of February, when we had first look at them, that was only 1 site given. We had a chance to look at other sites. I made my points at that meeting. I made my points to the CEO about the site chosen. So I don't need you to tell me. I know. I'm on about the 1 site chosen against all of the others which have been ignored. That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mahal.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been listening to everybody, and unfortunately my ward, I'm presently the only councillor for Glen Ward, and I've got a 4,000 homes new town being imposed by a very undemocratic process to Great Glen as part of this draft local plan. This was not open and transparent process. My residents, as you can see, many are here this evening, are staring down the concrete chute at the creation of a new town the size of Lutterworth, with a suggested housing need of 40%, affordable and social rent properties. 1,600 units will contribute 0 to infrastructure costs by the S106, nor will very much come from the 30% of the remaining 2,400 market homes as 1 or 2 bedroom properties, 750 units. Take off a minimum 10% for specialist elderly care housing, 400, policy HN 04. This leaves just 1,250 market homes, from which the vast bulk of tens of millions of infrastructure and community contributions will have to come from. It will also make these homes very expensive. From what I can see, there's no clear timetable of how and when the required infrastructure will be delivered to make it acceptable. Great Glen has already been subject to repeated serious flooding, and from what I can see so far, these proposals are likely to make that problem much worse. I've no option but to vote against it on behalf of my residents, many of whom have already contacted me, and those reasons are to do with, amongst other things, SUDs and a lack of clarity around infrastructure. And I know it also, part of David's presentation, you mentioned APO4, and you talk about farm diversification, the plan's vision, a thriving farming rural area. Well, we're set to lose that very rural area between Oadby and Great Glen. Thank you.
Councillor Wellborn.
Yes, thank you very much. And certainly I'd agree with many of the points by my colleagues on this side about lack of consultation and other concerns raised. And also echo points of Councillor Hollick and King about the Kidworth site. However, what I wanted to talk about is flooding, as Councillor Miles just mentioned, because this is a major problem. Specifically recently, many areas of our district have had considerable problems and been badly affected. And I would point to members' attention to policy DM08, specifically point 3F, which is on page 139 of the draft plan. And that's about SUDs, and it says, the design and layout of the SUDs should prioritise nature-based solutions and, taking account of the hydrology of the site, must demonstrate that the peak rate of runoff over the lifetime of the development, allowing for climate change, is no greater for the developed site than it was for the undeveloped site, and reduced wherever possible. Next sentence. Developments are required to achieve a 20% reduction in runoff rates compared to pre-development conditions to account for existing surface water runoff problems. Now, to me, this sounds contradictory. So I'd like to ask the portfolio holder, is this a vague commitment to reduce runoff wherever possible, or is it a cast iron requirement to reduce runoff by 20%? I'm concerned about the wording as it stands. It could be used by developers to do the bare minimum on flood prevention. Now, this plan proposes to carpet over land at Stretton Hall, right next to Great Glen, where we have seen some of the worst flooding in our lifetime in that village. And whatever way you look at it, it is not going to make the problem any better without specific written into the policy relating to Stretton Hall and other large developments to reduce runoff by 20%. So in conclusion, this concerns me. The way it is written concerns me. I don't think it will properly address flooding, which is a huge issue for many of our residents. It's one of the many reasons why I can't support this plan. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. I feel quite shocked what I've heard tonight. that, you know, that the allegation of something's undemocratic, we are on dangerous ground if we try to go down that route. We've seen what's happening in America. Once you start undermining democracy, we are part of democracy. You are part of it. If you start undermining it, you can put that seed of doubt in it. You know which way that's going to go. We have all been invited to those briefings. I'm not saying this is perfect. The people here tonight, we've all got very valid concerns about this. Absolutely, it needs to go out for public consultation. It needs to come back again. But that is a democratic process. This is not somewhere to be trying to gain political points. This is people's lives. People are terrified about all the houses that are being proposed. Why can't we just work together on that and try and get the public to have their say, and then we bring it back? This is not the place for political game playing, please.
Okay. Councillor Graves, do you want to come back? It must be.
Yes, it was just a critical informative point, and I'd be grateful, and I think Councillor Wellbound will as well, if the officers will address this. The valid point he raises about 3F, the SUDS and the water runoff. My reading of this is the first part is peak rate of runoff. So if you compared it to a traffic analogy, that's the peak traffic hours, whereas the second part says developments are required to achieve a 20% reduction in runoff rates. I regard that as being general traffic if you use traffic analogy. So I would be grateful.
Point of order. Can I just ask what capacity Councillor Gray is speaking? Because earlier on, Councillor Galton was introduced as the portfolio holder for this item. What capacity is Councillor Gray speaking? You've just allowed him to raise a point of whatever, a question that's been raised by Councillor Wellbound, and he's now making a statement about it. In what capacity?
It's a
Thank you, Chairman.
a point of clarification. Councillor Galton will answer Councillor Wellbound's question.
Chairman, could I just literally just finish that by saying, I hear what you're saying. I'm almost adding to the debate with this information. I regard this as being a clear statement. Councillor Wellbound doesn't, and I'm interested in hearing the officer's view. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gare.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This will be the second time I've been through this process, and I am going to vote in favour of it because I think we need to move forward. I think the important points are to make sure that the public is kept as best informed as it can be, that we listen to the public and make what alterations we can. It's obvious that we can't alter everything that everybody wants, but we have listened, we have done our best, and we explain how it happens. And coming back to Councillor Taylor's point about democracy, as a retired teacher, it's always great to see when people learn. And under the last plan, Lutterworth Town Council was threatened with legal action if it kept its residents informed about what was going on in Lutterworth East. And town councillors were banned from the library by the county council from sitting next to the plants that were there. So it's good to see that this time we have the full support in moving forward in a democratic way, which wasn't offered to us before. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Moda.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say, respectively, to Councillor Taylor and Councillor Sarfas, that both these councillors have actually brought up political points. We haven't. To me, anyway, it's not about politics. This is about getting the right plan through for the people. It's nothing to do with us or you or them. It's about working together to get the right plan through. And this, Councillor Taylor, is what you call democracy. What's happening right now? Me talking, you talking, and the public here. Just so that, you know, I wasn't sure because it didn't sound as if you recognised it for what it was tonight. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Asher.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that if the alternative to not putting this through tonight, from what we've heard heard tonight and what we've heard over the course of the last few weeks is that we'd be looking at potentially 2,000 more houses, more money spent on the local plan. You know, you're criticising the amount of money that's already been spent. We'd end up spending more taxpayers' money. We're putting it through so that the public can have their say. We can take that feedback, go back to have a look at things. None of us are going to like all of the plan. I don't like all of the plan. There's always going to be things and houses on people's doorsteps that they're not going to like. I've got a prison on my doorstep. There was no democracy involved with that. Michael Gove ticked the box and said, go ahead with it. Nothing I can do. You know, there's so many things that are unfair in life, and there always are going to be. But tonight we're voting, well, we're having a vote whether we put this through. There's been a lot of hard work on this. We've listened to the experts. There has been consultation. There's been the local plan advisory panel, as we've heard. We've been in briefings with maps. Other councillors have come round and put stickers on my map for my area, which I was not happy about on the evening. I won't be naming any names, but I think that was absolutely disgusting. So I think the thing is, yes, we have all had briefings. There may be people that couldn't attend those briefings, but they could always ask David Atkinson for advice on things. And I think to get this through, to get it out, to try and get this local plan through under the old policy, so we've got less houses, it's less money. I think we've just got to do it. We've got to crack on with this. And I think, yes, very important that we listen to feedback from the residents and take that on board. But if we don't vote for this tonight, I feel it's reckless. It's reckless for our residents. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. Just try to sort of sum it all up, really. I mean, we've got to build these houses. We haven't got a choice. We've got to build houses across our district. And so, and also, as a responsible council, we need a local plan. Any business of any size, certainly our size, needs to have a business plan. We call it our local plan. And we need to do that. And we've got to build this total number of houses. Now, the officers, I mean, I congratulate the officers and the consultants in what they've done. There's a huge task for them to achieve this, but they've done it, as we said in the very beginning, and I congratulate them on that. But when you look at the document, I think some documents around here, 900 pages, I think, that's all the work that's gone on in producing that document. Hundreds of sites have been assessed and have been critically examined and evaluated. And I think if you look at the whole picture, it's quite logical. You know, we've got to build the houses, we've got to put them somewhere. And if you look at the map of the district, there's proximity to the city. That's important for economic development. There's proximity of houses to the A6 and a lot of our corridors. And Magna Park, I tell you, is incredibly important to us financially. So, and that's bolstering the economy as well. So, and again, looking into the detail of it, we've actually protected a lot of the smaller villages. The areas where the housing is going is logical. And we've done our best to protect the smaller villages. So I think it's a good plan. But we need the public to know. So we are, and as other councillors have said, some of us who've sat in on many, many briefings on this have a pretty good idea of how we've got there step by step. But the public need to have their chance now. They have an opportunity. 8 weeks is a very long time to have your say. If you want to have your say, I suggest that people will do it earlier. We'll have to see. But I support this plan now in the way it's been built up, in a professional way, in a critically examined way. We are where we are. Let's vote now and let the public have their say. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, to all councillors and the members of the public for being here tonight. So, yes, I would like to pay tribute to the local plan and say how well the whole team has done, and thank you for bringing this to us. I think it really is important to say that affordable homes for everyone is so important today. It's the one thing this country needs right now, in particular, affordable homes. If you've got children, you will want them to live somewhere. I have a young son. He will need a home. At the moment, he's renting, but he might want to buy his own home. It's so important. Everywhere we live now was once a green field. I think we need to remember that. Magna Park. The arguments that Councillor Page has made currently are very valid. And we've heard those arguments over the last two phases of Magna Park. They were all made about the employment. We have low unemployment. The amount of cars it brought in. I've made those complaints myself. But the Magna Park has got bigger and bigger. And I look forward to feeding into the plan as we move forward, to making those points, to ask our planners to look at this. I have concerns about Magna Park and over the diversification of just having one type of employment in our area. But it really is important we get this through. The idea of rejecting this going forward would be complete folly. And that would be letting our residents down in this district way more in terms of cost and viability. This would be the wrong move. So yes, I will be backing this local plan. Thank you.
Well, I think that's all the questions. Councillor Galton. Oh, Councillor Knowles, sorry, I didn't see it.
Mr. Chairman, I seconded this a long time ago. So now everyone has indicated that they've spoken, I think forced to me to second it. Oh, sorry, my phone's off yet. Forced me to second it, as I did earlier, and to speak, if I may, and then over to Councillor Galton. We had a cabinet meeting a very short time ago, and I was delighted to see so many members of the public there. And we took the opportunity that night to make sure that we engaged with the public and we listened to the public. And that was important, and important that we did it. And we're doing it again tonight. What worries me, Chairman, is that we seem to be going down that route again of spreading of confusion, and you'll suddenly mask the past. The bottom line is for me that it needs to be said that we could have been doing this a long time ago, but the previous administration just didn't deliver it. The duty to cooperate sat on the desk undelivered, and we waited months. Then when we had to push it through, we got absolutely slaughtered for what we did. But it's proved to be the saving grace, because it's one of the reasons why we've got 2,000 houses less by going under the old NPPF, because it's enabled us to go under that transition. Vitally important. We've got the need tonight to vote this through. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things I know Councillor Galton's going to say. We've got the real need tonight to vote this through, because it is going out to public consultation. Now, I realise it's all the theatre, there's a by-election and everybody wants to be seen and getting all the applause of the residents from Great Glen. But the bottom line is, for me, our residents are vitally important to us. This is about our residents, it's about our community. It's about engaging with the communities and make sure the communities have their say on all of this. When they had the awful flooding in Glen, and it was terrible what they had to put up with there, it was really terrible. We stepped in as a council and provided the services to collect and get away some of the terrible damaged goods that had to be removed. We've stepped in as a council and provided in the budget that's just gone through £500 to each of the houses that have been flooded internally. This council is committed to our community. This administration is committed to our community. But what worries me is when we sit here and we start going on about we haven't been consulted, we don't know anything about it. There were so many briefings that went on, Chairman. There were a huge number. And all I can say is there must have been a lot of people getting the briefings, because an awful lot of it was being leaked and put online very quickly afterwards. So they must have been getting it from somewhere. And I can only imagine they got it because they were turning up to briefings. We've been accused of not being democratic and all sorts of things going on. But the bottom line is this is about democracy. It's important that everyone is listened to, everyone is heard, but that we now take the step to get this taken now to those who matter, our communities. That the communities have this before them, that they have access. Let us get out there with the communities, talk to the communities and listen to what's got to be said. And then the process has begun. If we don't, and I say this to anybody who wants to vote against this tonight, the word reckless has been used. I wouldn't use that word. What I would say is I would be deeply concerned, because you're playing with the very future of the district, what's left of the future. Because if you end up voting against this tonight, you are going to saddle us with 2,000 more houses and millions of pounds you're going to have to find to do a new local plan. Plus the fact, I don't know whether the officers have got the strength to stand up and do another one that quickly. I mean, it's been an incredible effort, and I do pay tribute to the officers, and I pay tribute to the members who've actually attended all these briefings. There's been a lot of hard work gone into this, Chairman, and I would urge members tonight to vote it through. Let's get it out there and let's get it out to the consultation stage. We have to do it. We have to deliver it. And those who are speaking against it, I say one thing to you. You could have done this a long, long time ago. Why you didn't do it, I will never know. But we've grasped it and we've done it and we've delivered it.
Councillor Galton, do you wish to exercise your right to reply?
I do indeed, Chairman. I need to answer some of the points that have been raised, and I hope you'll give me a little flexibility, because there are a number of points that have been made by members that do need to be responded to. So working through, and I'll address where people have asked the question, member has asked the question or raised a point that needs responding to, as opposed to just given their position, and respect all those positions that have been expressed tonight. So Councillor Bannister says we turbocharged it and we had to put a significant amount of reserves into it. I don't disagree with any of that. Yes, we did. Councillor Bannister says that we turbocharged the system. We took on extra staff in order to do this, and he's absolutely right. We did. We thought long and hard about whether we should do that, and I, for one, came to the conclusion that the alternative would have been much worse for the reasons that we've identified and explained. Possibly looking down the barrel of 5 years without a local plan, and therefore not being able to get back and restore a 5-year land supply and get back into controlling or influencing where development takes place. Councillor King, right, so I think what I would say is the notion that we're doing something different through this process, I utterly refute that. Yes, we've had to do it faster, but we've gone through the statutory processes, Reg 18 and now Reg 19. And really what we've done is not a lot different to what you did when you were the portfolio holder with the last local plan. You know, you proposed that we went to a Reg 19 consultation just like we are tonight, and you proposed 1,260 houses at Lutterworth, 1,200 at Scraptoft, and 1,078 on 3 sites at Market Harborough. Nothing in Kibworth. Funny that, wasn't it? There was nothing in the last plan for Kibworth. And of course, there were 3 SDAs, and we put in what you proposed, and we went the 2 SDAs. So that was a difficult job to do then, and it's no easier trying to do it now. But Councillor Knowles made the point about if we got on with this a bit sooner and took some difficult decisions, then we might not be where we are now, having to get it done within a matter of days because the clock is ticking. And I agree with that. You know, the tools were in the shed, but you didn't even open the door and get started on it. And that delay has had consequences, particularly around not addressing one way or another the issue of the unmet need. So what I haven't heard tonight is any realistic, credible alternative proposals put forward. They've been complete absence. Nobody likes the in planning the entirety of all the sites that the officers have assessed and brought forward. the hierarchy, the plan hierarchy that we are working to is no different than the current plan. And that is driving where the allocations are being proposed. The hierarchy is doing that job. And so I think I'm not 100% happy with a massive 1,200 houses in my ward, but I recognise that the evidence points to having to replace that site that can't go ahead from the last local plan. So I move on now to Councillor Dan. You know, the member briefings were open to all members, and you know, you'd be very welcome. There will be further meetings. You're very welcome to attend, and I'm sorry if you feel you didn't have all the information, but they were open, they were there, and any member could come. And what I did in chairing those meetings was always, once the panel members had had their chance to ask questions, all other members present could ask their questions. And I took that step. I didn't have to. I took advice, but it was something that was important to me to do, to give everyone the chance to have their say. Councillor Page, what we're dealing, of course, here is national need with the strategic distribution, the massive increase in online shopping. You know, we all sit there and do it, don't we, because it's easier. But those goods have to come from somewhere. They have to come from a warehouse and they have to get delivered. And we are responsible. The fact is that the location, I think, is in the centre of the country, you know, so many hours from just about everywhere, every major town and city. So unless the government, and the last one didn't, and I don't think this one will, changes that national policy, we're stuck with having to identify that. And from what I've seen from the studies, they only go one way up in terms of that need. If there was a study that came out that said that the previous ones were wrong, then we'd have to look at that. But that doesn't seem to have been what's happened in the past. Councillor Mahal, the Environment Agency and the lead local flood authority are, of course, two statutory consultees that will be asked for their views during the Reg 19 process. And, you know, we will obviously want to look at what they say. And if the concerns you're raising, if they raise similar concerns, then that will have to be looked at and taken into account during the Reg 19, at the end of the Reg 19 process. And Council Wellband on the SUDS. So yes, I've had a quick word with the officers. The plan, that policy will require developers to deliver a 20% betterment. It will require, and I agree with you, the wording could be a bit clearer. And if you want to put in submission during the Reg 19, I'll assure you that that will be looked at and how we can make it a bit clearer to say the same thing. But that is what it is saying. It's a requirement for a 20% betterment on sites. So I think I've answered that particular point on that. In fact, I think I've answered all. I think I've answered all the questions that came up from members. So it only falls to me to close the debate, Chairman, and to ask members. Repeat, you know, we are asking members to support going to public consultation for 8 weeks on this plan, and yeah, I'm willing to propose that.
Move the vote, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Galton. Council is making decisions on this report, and these have been proposed and seconded. Those in favour, please raise your arm. Those against? Those abstaining? There's 16 for the motion, 7 against, abstentions 4. So that is carried. We now move to the item 5 of the agenda on page 1277 to 1298 of the agenda pack. Local government scheme update. I invite Councillor Galton to present the report.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I've forgotten about this, but we do need to do it. So this report basically is the framework in which we operate under in terms of setting out what we will do, when we will do it, and we are looked at and monitored on that. So it really is a technical document. It's something we have to do. We're required to submit, and we're required to review it and update it from time to time when circumstances change. So I would strongly urge your members to support this. If you want to ask any questions, the officers are on hand to answer them. Thank you.
Second, Councillor Noel. Does anyone wish to speak on this? We will move to the vote now. Thank you, Councillor Galton. Councillor is making a decision on this report, and these have been proposed and seconded. Those in favour, please raise your arm. Those against? Those abstaining? Recommendation carried. We now move to item 6, any urgent business. There is no urgent business to consider at this meeting. Meeting closed at 21:14.